because you're an All-American in multiple events?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So for diving is very niche. Like it should be separated in my opinion, because it's such a different sport.
Yeah.
But it falls under one category. So when you take general collegiate athletics, a lot of the funding goes to male sports that people watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they watch football, basketball, baseball. Those are professional athletic sports later. So it's complicated, right? Because I only did one event, but I did it at a really high level, but I only contributed so many points in a guy's event, you know, where other events take more priority and they get paid more and scholarship money more and stuff like that.
I never even thought about the transition from gymnastics to diving. Like that's like so obvious, like after hearing you say it, but I never.
That's a pro move.
Yeah, never thought about that before in my life. All right, so college, get through college, swim all 4 years?
I only did 2 years of diving. So I got into college doing this lifelong athleticism, and I got into college and I thought I would do all 4 years there doing the sport that I wanted to do. And halfway through, I was getting burned out, and I started feeling that burnout after the first year, doing 2-a-day workouts all the time.
Yeah, it's unforgiving.
It is unforgiving. I mean, I spent all 4 years of college getting up at 6 a.m. I mean, there was no way around it. I just did. So growing up and doing a all year round sport where that's such a focus, and then going into college where all year round sport again, and now you're pushing the boundary to higher parts. I got to a point where I was getting burned out. I'd never been burned out in that sport, but after the first year, I knew I couldn't go back and continue all 4 years. So the goal I had was, okay, you're seeded to be a potential to win nationals. Let's get that win, and then I can walk away on a high note. So I was really heavily a goal that second year. I was like, let's really push it, and then I think I'm going to have to walk away. And I decided to find a different path. And I wanted to get into the military because I didn't really have a path out of college. Like when I went into school, like most young men, I didn't have an idea of what I was really doing in school. And most of my friends, especially at age like 18, 19, they started school and then they left and did something else. It wasn't that far-fetched. So I was feeling this angst of like, what do I do after school? I've never thought about my career life ever growing up.
Yeah.
It was just athletics. So I had to take kind of a look in the mirror and say, okay, I want to do something bigger than myself. I don't have a path that I want to go down specifically. I'm in school just to be a diver. I'm not really here to be in school. I don't really care. And so that led me to the Army.
What'd you major in?
I majored in graphic design.
Oh, okay.
Because I liked it.
Yeah.
Like I went to college and say, I just like doing it.
That makes sense for like what you do now.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It makes sense now, but at the time when you say, oh, I'm going for graphic design, you know, you kind of get that look from adults. They're like, oh.
Oh yeah. It's like being an art history major.
Yeah. You're like, you don't need to do that. I'm like, well, I just like it. And I don't really, I just want to enjoy college, right. You know?
Yeah. You're not thinking about the job after.
No, I wasn't thinking about the job. No, I mean, I just never had. And it's not like I just ignored it. I was like, well, I'm athletic and there's these goals that I want to hit. So I kept it short term where I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college and be a diver. Like that was it. So I didn't focus too much beyond that because it wasn't really helping my athletic goals like, in the next 4 years.
Yeah. It's such a funny thing to think about because I mean, now, like, I don't feel like I didn't have a plan, even though I didn't have a plan. You know what I'm saying? Like I kind of fell into stuff and then I just kept doing things. Like I was never like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do next. This is next. Like even before, recording this, we were talking about, like, you asked me if I was going to do my business full time. Like that was never really like, yes.
Right.
It was always like, if it happens. And then that's where we are. So I don't think you need a plan per se, depending on what you're doing. Like if you want to be a doctor, you got to have a plan. But if you have skills and you have experience in stuff, like especially with sports, like I can't say this enough. Like it teaches you so many things about life that you can't get anywhere else. And I understand that not everyone can play sports. I get that. Because I feel like people hear me say that and they're like, oh, well, what if I'm not athletic? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not talking to you. Like it's not, but I think being at a high level with sports, you get knocked down so many times. And there's so many people out there that get knocked down once and then that's it for them. Like they have no resilience. And like that's what sports can give you, is that ability to just keep coming back.
Right.
And then the discipline of getting up at 6 a.m. every day. You know, I made a point to somebody the other day. They said, "Oh, I'm not motivated to go to the gym." And I said, "Are you motivated to go to work every day?" And they're like, "Well, I have to go to work." Like, do you understand how it's the same thing, right? Like, I don't enjoy, working. I don't want to go work out all the time, but I'm going to do it because I know I should. And it's the same thing. Like, you don't have to go to work. Like, yeah, you got to get paid. Yeah, whatever. You might get fired or whatever. But still, you could show up and do a shit job. Like there's a reason that you have that like drive to be just to show up and do your best, and I don't know. It's just like a shift in a mindset, I think, when it comes down to it. Like, I think everyone's capable of thinking that way, but they just have to maybe be guided a little bit.
Yeah. And guided's the right word, because when you're growing up in sports, you are guided. I mean, there's no kid that's on a team sport that magically isn't guided. And I was doing individual sports on a team. So I'd say I had less experience on team sports collectively, how like your experiences with soccer, right? It's very different, but the same principles applied. I mean, across the board is you learn how to build resiliency, and you learn how to just kind of push past certain levels physically that mentally you can do, but physically it starts hurting, and it's that mental hurdle. And if you learn it as a kid, I mean, that transfers over a lot. I think it really makes people tougher long-term, even if they're not necessarily athletic long-term. I think it just makes you tougher long-term.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the other day when I was in, like, 'cause there's a few transitions that I can point to over my athletic career where I like really took the next step. And I didn't know I wanted to like do soccer like for a long time until I was 15, 16, which is pretty late in the game. And I remember going from junior high, so 8th grade, to 9th grade training with the high school team, over the summer. And we used to run like hell, dude. Like, and I haven't run like this in so long, but I was so unprepared for the level of intensity. And looking back on it right now, like it's nothing. Like, I've done so much worse than what we did back then. But we used to train at 3:00 because our coach was the chemistry teacher and he had to be in school like prior to school starting. So we're out there 90 degrees, running bleachers, running, intervals around the track. And I was literally like borderline like depressed, because I knew like when I would get up in the morning, I'd be like, shit, I gotta go run my ass off in 7 hours. And I wouldn't do anything. I'd just be like, I just gotta sit around because I know I'm gonna run. I did that for like 2 weeks. But that alone by itself, like that suck. The next year, I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. I know what this is. And then it was like a huge transition. And then it happened again in college. Like, I get to college as a freshman, I'm freaking out because I'm like, everyone around me is so good. They're so much bigger than me, stronger than me, move the ball way faster. And I was like, you come to doubt yourself a little bit. And then after that, like after you break through it, it's like, okay, like you're here. You've been this. You've been through this. You've done this.
Yep.
And that happens. Like, I feel like if that's not happening, you're not on the right path.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I think. And so getting that transition from being an athlete to a career that was going to be physically and mentally tough was a perfect setup. And then again, it was another layer of like, I understand myself, but I'm putting myself in a new environment again to get tested in a new way. And that was the beginning of my Army career, which has led me very shortly up until recently.
Mm-hmm. And so how many years was that you were in the Army?
I was in the Army for 10 years total. I did 8 years commission. So the first 2 years I did as a cadet in college. So I was in this transition period, and I decided, okay, I'm not going to be an athlete anymore. I want a way to pay for college, and I want a way to find a job. So I said, okay, the Army's perfect because it's a 3.5, 4 year commitment right when you're done. I'll go be an officer. I knew a little bit about that from my dad. He wasn't Army, he was Air Force, right? So it was like a little different.